Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Today is July the 4th, 2017. To those of you celebrating Independence Day today, happy July 4th. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, you remember the thrill in Manila. You remember how that fight ended. The trainer, Eddie Futch, Hall of Fame trainer, in the corner of Joe Frazier, tells Joe Frazier that he's calling the fight. You remember that, right? He tells a former heavyweight champion, in essence, that his multi-fight battle against Muhammad Ali has come to an end. And Joe Frazier, sitting on the stool, takes the news. Does not come out for the 15th round. One of Freddie Roach's biggest regrets in life is that that same man, Eddie Futch, who happened to be Freddie Roach's trainer when Freddie Roach was a fighter, told him to walk away from the game. Told Freddie that he was getting hit with punches that he should not be getting hit with, that his reflexes had dimmed. Now, at the time, Freddie felt that he had a lot left in the sport, and he split with Eddie Futch over Eddie's belief that Freddie should call it a day. Freddie then went on to lose a series of fights and develop Parkinson's, something that may have come from boxing. Freddie, candidly, in interviews, has said that he looks back at that moment and realizes that he should have walked away from the sport. Freddie is now the trainer of Manny Pacquiao, and according to reports by Kevin Io on Yahoo Sports that the boxing hardcore need to look at, Freddie Roach has told Manny he should walk away from the sport. That the only other fight he should have should be a possible rematch with Jeff Horn, if he feels the need to have that rematch before walking away from the sport. Understand, Manny Pacquiao has not had a knockout since 2009. Now let me make the other argument, and let me also reveal my cards. I'm relentlessly pro-athlete. I believe these boxers put themselves in harm's way. I've watched boxing long enough to see some guys who were very eloquent fighters, right? Guys who you just assumed would become boxing analysts in their post-fight careers. Lose it, right? Develop slurred speech. Develop shakes. Disappear from the public light. You then hear that the fighter is punch drunk, right? That's a word we don't use too often these days, but it's a word that, or phrase, that used to be used in the 70s and 80s. I'll just name one such fighter, Wilfred Benitez. I just assumed that Benitez, who was one of the youngest world champions in history, was going to be an ambassador for the sport as he got older. That he would have a very successful and very public post-fight career. That's not what happened. He stayed in the sport too long, right? Apparently, he suffered from punch-drunk syndrome. Well, now we have Manny Pacquiao, and this is one of those rare moments. And I'm someone who, years ago, here online, said that he thought Nathan Cleverly, who currently has a belt, should retire. Right? This is one of those rare moments where, based on my layman's interpretation of Manny Pacquiao's current mental health, his speech pattern, whether he slurred speech, his alertness, I believe that Manny should continue his career. I understand Manny's in his late 30s. I understand Manny's real passion is being a congressman in the Philippines. Let me just say, though, that I believe boxing fans would be very hard-pressed to find a better spoken, more gracious, more aware, more together fighter right now than Manny Pacquiao. Right? And while it is true, Pacquiao has been the victim of multiple knockout losses in his career. Most recently, the Juan Manuel Marquez KO loss. I would argue that more times than not, Manny Pacquiao is barely touched in the ring. The Jeff Horn fight was jarring because Jeff Horn was actually able to rough up Manny Pacquiao physically in a way we haven't seen Manny Pacquiao roughed up. And Manny still is very accurate with that left hand, as evidenced by Jeff Horn's face after the fight. Let's also talk about further reasons why I feel Manny Pacquiao should continue his career. He doesn't have to make long-term plans. He doesn't have to say, I'm going to fight another 3 to 5 years. He doesn't have to do that. He can take it on a fight-by-fight basis. But nothing I saw in this fight suggests to me that it's completely over for Manny Pacquiao. Let's talk about it. First, can we agree that this fight was close? Right? At a minimum, in terms of gauging how much Manny Pacquiao was in the fight. I know Jeff Fennick, I know Danny Green are saying that Jeff Horn won the fight on their scorecard. CBS Sports had the fight 114-114. Understand you now have people coming forward admitting what wasn't said on fight night. Bob Arum, the promoter of the event, now says that he thought the fight was close. Freddie Roach, Manny Pacquiao's trainer, now says that he thought the fight was close. Put it this way, Manny Pacquiao was very much in the fight. He did not embarrass himself. He was competitive. Right? Let me also say, too, that this was a fight against a big welterweight. Jeff Horn weighed in at 147. Didn't have an ounce to spare. According to reports, had to cut weight to make weight. Now, Manny Pacquiao says that he can go down to 135 pounds today. Right? One of the secrets of this fight was the size gap. Perhaps Manny might want to consider, given the huge fights at lighter weights, taking some time to fight against some guys who are more his size. Guys who aren't big welterweights who on fight night might actually weigh close to 160. Maybe the problem here was the size gap, not the age of Manny Pacquiao. Let me also point out, too, that the market is there for Manny Pacquiao. We still are interested in his fights. The TV ratings on ESPN, according to reports, were the highest rated boxing match for the last 2 decades. You didn't get ratings like this for a boxing match on ESPN since something like 1995. Manny Pacquiao needs to realize right now that he is loved. If anything, the public's interest in his career is even more intense, given the controversy, that's what we'll call it, arising from this Jeff Horn fight. Let me also say, too, that while I feel the fight was close, understand there is the view in the public, among many, including boxing hardcore guys and boxing lifers that Manny Pacquiao was robbed. Lennox Lewis, right? One of the great heavyweight champions of the last half century, in my opinion, felt that Manny Pacquiao was robbed. Right? Now that's in addition to a host of boxing fans. People like Kobe Bryant, Deion Sanders, Chauncey Billups, right? All of whom were online. Keep in mind, we don't have to speculate about their views. They express their views on Twitter. But understand, many people who followed the sport for a long time, who've been involved in the sport, like Lennox Lewis, thought Manny Pacquiao was robbed, thought this fight was unremarkable apart from Jeff Horn's determination. They thought there was a talent gap. In other words, Manny Pacquiao to some still has more talent than even a young lion with an unbeaten record like Jeff Horn. Let me also point out too, and I know there's a rematch clause, I know it gives Brisbane the right to be considered for the rematch, and I'm sure in Brisbane they're going to make whatever package there is out there for the rematch as attractive as possible. Right? They're going to offer top dollar. But let me just say, Manny Pacquiao is the holder of the rematch clause, as I understand it. He doesn't have to fight Jeff Horn next. Right? He could walk away from the rematch. Understand, when you're the boxing legend who has the right to a rematch, there are many people in the sport who want to fight you. Some fighters might even want to fight you more now than they did before you officially lost your last fight. So Manny Pacquiao doesn't have to fight Jeff Horn again to make money, at least not right away. Understand too, if Manny Pacquiao fights a third party, Jeff Horn will still be there if Jeff Horn waits for Pacquiao or wins his next fight. From this point forward in Jeff Horn's career, as long as Manny Pacquiao stays active, some member of the press at practically every press conference Jeff Horn gives is going to say, hey, when are you going to fight Manny again? Of all the people out there in the boxing world, I'm guessing Jeff Horn is going to be asked most about Manny Pacquiao as long as Manny stays active. Now let me say this. You have some Hall of Fame fighters, folks, Hall of Fame today. Mikey Garcia, Terrence Crawford, who would make for intriguing opponents against Manny Pacquiao at 140 pounds, who wouldn't be as big physically as Jeff Horn was at 147. To the boxing hardcore, I think we all know Manny Pacquiao against Terrence Crawford would be huge. Many people, let me raise my hand here, view Crawford today as the best in the sport pound for pound. By the way, the promoter should be able to work out that deal because, of course, Crawford and Pacquiao have the same promoter, Top Rank. Keep in mind, if Manny, as I suspect, is a guy with an itch he needs to scratch, right? If he beats Crawford, he could then pivot and say, okay, I've backed away a bit from the Jeff Horn rematch. I'm ready now mentally to have that rematch. Right? Fighting a different fighter in a different weight class before considering a Jeff Horn rematch doesn't negate the possibility of fighting Jeff Horn at a later date. Right? It just gives Manny an opportunity to back away from the loss, right? Especially since Manny believes that Jeff Horn was a little bit dirty in his tactics, right? Get back to who you are, recharge your batteries against a third-party opponent, and then you can always revisit the Jeff Horn equation. Understand, Manny just pulls the biggest crowd on ESPN since the 1990s for a boxing match, right? There's interest in what Manny Pacquiao does. Let me also say, too, that where I'm Manny right now, right, if I were advising him, because Jeff Horn was bigger than Manny, came forward on his front foot and used that physicality against Manny, right, in terms of pushing Manny around, backing Manny up, being hyper-aggressive. If I were Manny right now, coming officially off of a loss, I wouldn't want to face that kind of fighter in my next fight, right? If I'm not fighting Jeff Horn. So I would stay away from Errol Spence. Let's remember, Errol Spence has a belt at 147 pounds. Now, while I personally believe that Manny Pacquiao beats Errol Spence, I also believe that boxers are human beings just like the rest of us. Getting a loss is mentally frustrating, right? It's depleting. So I believe Manny Pacquiao at this point should back away from Jeff Horn type fighters. Guys who are big at 147, who come forward, who are throwing a lot of power shots, who are trying to hunt him down, trying to hunt down opponents. I would look carefully at that Kell Brook-Errol Spence fight, and I would say, look, I know Spence is a worthy opponent. I know it would be a big payday. I know it would be a title shot. But I would stay away from him. I would also look at the opening round of Keith Thurman against Danny Garcia. I know Thurman's coming off elbow surgery, but I would stay away from Thurman, who, big hitter, can be aggressive, can fight on the inside, will try to cut off the ring, is big for 147. I would stay away from Keith Thurman. Another guy I would stay away from, because this guy can get inside, be aggressive, right? Make the fight a little bit ugly like Jeff Horn did. Use a lot of physicality. Would be Sean Porter. To sum up, if I'm Manny Pacquiao, I would continue fighting here, right? Maybe not against Jeff Horn in the rematch, right? Because I'm sure Manny doesn't want to return to Brisbane for an emotionally taxing rematch so soon after the controversy of the first fight, right? But Manny needs to understand, whatever's in the contract, he has options. He's a living legend. He's one of the dominant athletes of our time, right? Think Floyd Mayweather. Think Usain Bolt. Think Ronaldo. Think Messi. Think Serena. Think, in the U.S., Tom Brady. Manny Pacquiao is in that very elite class of generation-defining athlete. We're going to follow Manny wherever he goes, right? But I will say, Manny should think about styles before picking his next opponent. He should think about size before picking his next opponent. The problem with being an 8-weight division champ? Is Manny Pacquiao right now, for big welters like Jeff Horn, is a little undersized? Right? You don't have to fight a guy who's physically bigger than you in his backyard, who is front foot heavy and hyper aggressive. There are other elite fighters in boxing with other styles against whom Manny Pacquiao right now would be very competitive. And I mean very competitive. Right? I personally feel, as I've said in earlier videos, that Pacquiao, because of his hand speed, his physical dominance, right? Fast foot speed, he still has all of that, would beat Terence Crawford. Right? I believe it's a bit too premature to have Manny Pacquiao leave the sport. Freddie Roach, as a fighter, was an overachiever. He didn't have Manny Pacquiao's hand speed, Manny Pacquiao's physical gifts. Whether you or not you believe that Manny Pacquiao won his first fight against Jeff Horn, I personally believe that it's still too early for Manny to leave the sport. He certainly has the right to do so. Right? It's the fighter's life. Manny has other things going on in his life, other goals. He's a husband, he's a father, he's a congressman. He has to make the decision for himself. But from where I sit, he's still world class. Right? He can still deliver in the ring. He's still a hell of a fighter, and there's still a lot of people, myself included, who would love to see him in more fights. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comments section of this video. Let me also point out too that fighters who don't move as well as Jeff Horn, and understand, Jeff Horn at times wasn't mid-range. Jeff Horn was short range. Up on Pacquiao, there are clinches where Jeff Horn has Pacquiao in a headlock. Right? There's some moments in the fight where it's unclear if Jeff Horn is landing a punch or an elbow on Manny Pacquiao. That last round, Jeff Horn is on Manny Pacquiao as if he were Manny Pacquiao's shirt when Manny has his back up against the ropes. I would take Manny Pacquiao over mid-range fighters like Danny Garcia. Guys who dole out a lot of punishment but don't go short range. Don't lean on you and actually wrestle you. Right? Manny's still competitive. This fight was a bad size and style matchup for him. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.